How's it going, guys? You got a big week here for, in particular, the Vikings, but also a lot going on in other Minnesota sports as well. We got Matt Dumba of the Minnesota Wild. He's going to miss 3 months with a pectoral tear.
Yep, pectoral, successful surgery, but yeah, it's going to be a big hit to the Wild, and they're already struggling this year, so 3 months for him. And then while we're currently recording this, we've got the Gophers in the Quick Lane Bowl, and as we speak, they're up 34-10. And I think PJ Fleck really has us going in the right direction. It's fun to watch these guys. They're really beating up on Georgia Tech. But Muhammad Ibrahim is 29 carries for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's killing it. I believe he is a freshman. But no, the Gophers are looking good and on the up and up. They had a great signing day. It'll be fun to see what comes of the Gophers here coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And their quarterback, also a rookie, Tanner Morgan, he's got 2 touchdowns. Was that just his third or was that just his second?
That would have been his second, I believe.
So he just threw his second touchdown. So Gophers looking good in that one, up 34-10 with 6:13 left. We'll update you that probably at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, as we go on with this one here.
But for sure, big talk of the week is the Vikings, and it's week 17 now, and it's all coming down to this. So they play the Bears at home. The game's been flexed from 11:30 to 3:30, depending on your time zone, obviously.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, just a huge game. It all comes down to this for the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, this is winning in, and it's a big game, and we'll just have to see how it plays out, because it very well could be that we'd be playing second strings depending on how the Rams end up doing. But I would like to see Chicago at full strength, because I honestly think we can beat them when we're firing on all cylinders.
Well, and the biggest part about that is if we win that game, we're going to play the Bears at Soldier Field in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very possible we have a back-to-back with the Bears.
For sure, and I think it's more than possible. The one game that we really want to watch this week is the Cardinals and Seahawks, but it's at Arizona, but I just don't think the Cardinals can win that game.
Yeah, you just never know when you're going on the road in the NFL, but that's a big game for the Vikings as well. Obviously, we got to win and be in, but it would be really nice to get that 5th seed and have to go to Dallas.
Exactly. I just think, one, Dallas hasn't been playing that great lately, and 2, it's a big advantage for us to be playing in a dome instead of outside.
Oh, for sure.
But we got the Eagles against the Redskins as well. That's another big game. That's really the only other game that we want to watch. And it's at D.C., so that's a big advantage for Redskins, but Eagles playing pretty well right now.
For sure. Before we even move on, we'll just go ahead and review the Lions game. It was a pretty slow start, but all in all, ended up pulling it together. It was really that first quarter that did it to us. And it's tough to put it all in the offense just because, our first drive started at the 1.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so you had a QB sneak, a fullback run, I believe, and then a running back run.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really put that on the offense, but all in all, the first quarter was pretty sluggish. But, I mean, the defense, 9 points, 3 field goals.
When you look at that, our special teams kind of just played crappy all around because we had bad punts that put them in position to score those 9 points.
For sure, and I mean the defense just really they pull it out. One thing we still haven't seen lately is turnovers. But if you're giving up 9 points a game, I don't really care about turnovers.
Yeah, and that's my thing too. I count a 3 and out as a turnover.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean if you're playing sound defense, I mean you can't really complain.
Yeah, for sure.
Dalvin really got going in the second half. Started passing the ball, and that play action was really working.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing to note is Cousins played a really good game. I mean, he had no turnovers and 3 touchdown passes.
Yeah, he played a solid game. I mean, this is what we should expect from him. Maybe a little bit more, but I mean, for the most part, he played pretty darn well.
For sure. And
if the whole offense just didn't have a sluggish first quarter, that's really what it came down to. But I mean, ultimately, it was a complete team win in the end.
You can't be upset with a Vikings win.
Yeah, I mean...
especially on the road. I mean, no matter who you're playing, the Lions aren't a bad team. And anybody you're playing on the road is tough.
And actually, the Lions' defense is one of the... I wouldn't say the better defenses in the league, but they're no slouch. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm happy with the win.
So big moves that we saw for the Vikings this week in the stats columns is their defense. Their total defense went down from number 4 to number 3, or up from however you want to say that. But they're only allowing 308.2 yards per game.
And I mean, that's just stellar.
Yeah,
and I mean, that really comes down to, total defense and then obviously defense on third down, which it's talked about, but I think it's a very underrated stat just because if you're getting off the field, obviously, you can't ask for much more than that.
For sure.
But what we got coming up here, I mean, we're going to play a very good Bears defense. So I think this could be a very low-scoring game. But, I mean, you just never know.
Yeah, so now we'll get to our cues. What do the Vikings need to improve on from last Bears game?
I think we just need to get more consistent from the start.
For sure.
You know, we saw us put 21 points up on the Dolphins in the first quarter and then get shut out.
Yeah.
Again, field position made a big difference, but we got to, especially with the Bears, we got to hit the ground running and we got to take care of the football.
And I think my big thing is we got to run the ball between the tackles. I know that people say that that's not our strength, but the only reason it's not our strength is because we haven't gone to it. But when you see like us against the Lions, Dalvin Cook did a really good job running between the tackles.
Oh, absolutely.
Our offensive line needs to step up and create those holes, but
for sure, and we got to get that play action going. If we can't get the run going right away, then we might as well start using that play action. Because if you saw from the Lions game, the play action is really what got the run game going.
For sure. I mean, they would load the box and then.
For sure, and it's again, we got to get Diggs and Thielen involved. I feel like the last few weeks they haven't really been involved a whole lot. Yes, Thielen I believe had over 80 yards last week, but we gotta get them involved.
I think one of the biggest things, though, is getting Rudolph involved. I think that's what really helped us to win this last game was having Rudolph in there and having him be successful. Obviously, you have a big play in that Hail Mary, which doesn't happen every week. But he also caught that other touchdown, and I think he had 6 or 7 catches.
Yeah, and he had 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, yes, people will say the Hail Mary was lucky, but you still got to make the play.
Exactly, and he did make the play. So.
And if you listen to some of the podcasts, I mean, you'll hear Rudolph talked about how perfectly the ball was thrown, and that's absolutely true. He put it 5 yards into the end zone.
For sure, and it was just great positioning. And if you look at it, it's guys like Thielen that make that play possible. Because if you look in the back of the end zone, you got Thielen triple covered, and you got Rudolph single covered.
For sure. And I actually think Dalvin ended up with 80 yards in this game.
Yeah, and I think we had pretty close to 100 yards total rushing,
I think we
which
had
isn't bad.
on 100 yards.
I mean, that's exactly what we need.
Yeah.
So
if we can get the run game going, and again, it's not even how much the whole game, it's just we got to start fast.
For sure. How do the Vikings tame the Bears pass rush this week?
You know, and this has been the question for every team all year, and I hate to say it, but the Bears defense is probably the best in the league right now. Maybe not right now, but I think they are the best in the league overall. But you just need to get those ends flowing up the field. And, obviously you do that with screens. And I actually think you'll see this with Stefanski's. You'll see a lot of running back screens, a lot of wide receiver screens, but it's not going to be too flashy. If you saw with DiFilippo, I mean, he's running play action into a fake wide receiver screen, and it ends up being a running back screen. So if we can just be generic, just get those ends up the field and then go from there. And, hopefully we start to wear them out and go from there.
Well, your point on screens is huge because that's where their strength is for the Bears is their defensive end pass rush. Khalil Mack, I mean, is the big one. So if we can get them to have to pull off to expect that screen, that's when we open up stuff down the field and open up running plays. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really key for the Vikings to tame that pass rush. So what have you seen from the Vikings last couple weeks here that have really given you hope for a deep push into the playoffs?
Talking about that, obviously we're getting the run game going, but even with a little bit of adversity, like if you go back to the Dolphins game, we had a little bit of a stall out with the offense, and then we kind of picked it back up. And then obviously we've talked about it multiple times already, just with how the offense started. And then towards the end of the game, we started to pick it back up. And if we can just, put in a full game, who knows what our offense can do. I mean, we put up 41 points against the Dolphins, and we took 2 quarters off.
For sure.
We got to stop taking quarters off. But, I mean, the big thing is obviously our defense. Yes, we're not getting turnovers, which I don't really care about as long as we're getting off the field. But our defense is back to where it was last year.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the biggest things for me is just that if we can play a complete game, it'd be really interesting to see where we're at.
And that's ultimately it. We just have to play a complete game, all 4 quarters, especially against the Bears, whether it's this week or knock on wood, hopefully the following week. And then, and nobody's really talking about it, surprisingly, but our kicking game has been sound.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he had some stutters here and there, but ultimately he is the second best kicker of all time, and he's done a good job.
Yeah, I mean, he's done all right. If you look at the numbers, they're not the greatest, obviously. I believe he's under 80% right now, but if he can, make it happen when it's crunch time, it's ultimately what we need. He's perfect for extra points and field goals the last 2 games. So.
For sure, and I think it's the slate is completely wiped clean on Sunday. You got to play it like a playoff game.
It's a brand new season. Really.
Exactly. I mean, as long as we can make it to the playoffs, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, and we're winning it, and like you're saying, tomorrow or Sunday is going to be, it's a brand new season.
For sure.
It's going to come down to one game, and we just got to bring it. I think the biggest thing here, and one of the bigger keys of the game, is obviously it's at U.S. Bank Stadium. You know, obviously being there a few times, there's not a whole lot of atmospheres like U.S. Bank Stadium. It's a very tough place to play. So I think that's going to be a huge deal.
Well, and the Bears haven't done great on the road this year.
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't know why it's not talked about, but Mitchell Trubisky is not a franchise quarterback.
He's not at all. I think it brings to my eyes more so when we get so much debate about Kirk Cousins, and nobody brings up questions about Mitchell Trubisky. Obviously, the money disparity is huge there.
Yeah.
But nobody talks about Mitchell Trubisky as not a playoff quarterback.
Well, and we were just going through it. You know, if you look at the quarterback ratings, I mean, Cousins is back over 100 for quarterback rating. If you look at some of these guys, Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, they're all under.
Their QBR is under
100, and some of them are actually substantially lower.
Exactly.
And it's just funny that there's no real questions raised. Yes, I mean, obviously they've been consistent throughout their whole year, but, you know, the NFL is, what are you doing for me right now?
Well, and my last question is, do you think that we can put to rest the debate if Cousins is worth the money or not?
Right now, I personally think we can, but I don't think the league is going to shut it out until he wins one of these big games like we have coming up on Sunday.
For sure, and I think that's the big test there is can he win in these big games? Because if you look at just the stats, I mean, he's got a 70.7 completion percentage, which is only second to Drew Brees, which is huge because Drew Brees is having a phenomenal season. I mean, Drew Brees is at 74.4,
which is ridiculous.
That's crazy. I mean, that's like unheard of
for sure.
So that's crazy. But you have him; he's the first Vikings quarterback to pass for over 4,000 yards since Brett Favre. That's huge.
Yeah, and going back to big games, you know, ultimately for the money, this is why he got paid, for us to bring us over the top and win big games like this.
Exactly, and I think that we can put the debate to rest for us. But the league's going to want more, and I want more too.
The league and the media is going to want more. I would like to see him get more consistent within. I mean, yards isn't a huge deal, but if you look at some of these, you know, prolific passers, they're 300-plus yards with 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Granted, you know, we don't need that. Our defense doesn't need it, but it would be nice to see, especially for the money.
For sure. Since we have that defense, let's blow teams out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's do what we did to the Dolphins to everybody.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? When you win 41-7, you take all that thought out of their mind of dominance.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where this starts. It doesn't matter what your record is as long as you get into the playoffs and you're clicking at the right time. I see some of these teams like the Rams, I think they peak too early.
Peak too early. If you look at the Saints, I mean, the Saints are still a good team, but they're, you know, they haven't played well. Cowboys haven't really played that well.
The Chiefs' secondary is atrocious. They're bad.
Yeah.
They're bad.
I honestly see the Chiefs going 1 and done.
They got torn apart by the Seahawks offense, which their running game is really good, but their passing game isn't fantastic.
Yeah, no. I mean, Russell Wilson is absolutely clutch, but the Chiefs' defense, especially now that we're getting into cold weather... It's pretty easy
to be clutch when the Chiefs don't cover guys.
Yeah,
that's what I saw in that game.
And I just feel like since it's been warmer and, you know, they've been passing and, you know, they've been putting up 40 points a game, you know, it's getting overshadowed. It's being overshadowed. The defense is ultimately going to be the demise. And, again, I see them being a one and done. For sure.
I mean, I can totally see that, too. So now we're going to go into something a little different. We haven't done this on podcast before, but we're going to do it now. Over and unders. So, do you think Dalvin Cook rushes for over 100 yards or under 100 yards?
With this one, it's tough to do this as a diehard Viking. I always wanted to do so well, and I think they're going to do so well. But for doing this podcast, I actually think Dalvin will be under 100 yards. I believe the Vikings as a team will rush for more than 100 yards, but I see Dalvin probably more in the 80-yard range, which I think would be all right. I think we can still win with that, but I think as a team we need to be over 100 yards.
And this is where I'm going to disagree with you. I think Dalvin's going to be at least 20 yards over 100 yards. I think he's going to have a really good game against the Bears.
Going for a big game then.
I am. I'm pushing for a big game. I really think that he's going to have a good game. If like you said, we can get the passing game going and get that screen game going, I think that opens up huge holes for Dalvin Cook. If he doesn't have the yards early, he'll get them later.
I will take this one a step further. I will say Dalvin Cook will have over 100 total yards because I see the screen game and then maybe some swing passes being a huge deal in this one, especially if we're trying to get those edges up the field. But yeah, I could see his total yardage being over 100. And then just real quick here, guys, because the game just finished up. We're kind of watching it while we're doing our podcast here. Gophers just won 34-10. Pretty fun game to watch from them, guys. They played well.
They improved to 7-6 on the season. I mean, I know it kind of doesn't count into your record, but it's a big game for the Gophers just to win that, just to be over 500. When you look at their team, they're comprised of a lot of freshmen, so I think that it's really promising going forward.
Yeah, and speaking of freshmen, I just saw that they were just over, I believe, 51% freshmen on their roster, and that's insane.
Well, and that's huge, especially, I mean, we talked about it last week with the 5-star recruit signings, and I think that that's going to be huge for them going forward. I don't see anything but promising things for the future.
Definitely positive things for the Gophers.
For sure. So now let's get back into the over and unders. Cousins, over or under 2 touchdown passes?
I see him well being over 2. I actually see probably 3. I would say more around the 3 range, but I could definitely go over on this one.
And here's, I'm going to say 2 on the dot. What I see from him is I see Dalvin's what gets us in to the red zone, and Cousins is what finishes it off. I feel like once we get into the red zone, the Bears bring up a little more. They stack the box a little bit more and shut off that run game. But then I see those little out routes to Diggs and Thielen and Rudolph that are going to pay big dividends for him.
And we won't do an over under on this one. But what do you think you're doing for? What do you think Cousins does for yards?
For yards, I mean, I see him north of 200 yards.
See, this is where I feel like this is where Cousins really puts it on his shoulder and just has a really good game against a good defense at home. I see him having 3 touchdowns, and I see him having 280 plus yards.
Well, I hope you're right, but I would be more than pleased with a 200-yard game with 2 touchdowns.
Ultimately, I would be pleased with a win, but
for sure.
It would just be nice to see Cousins get a little respect here.
And what I want to see more so out of Cousins, protect the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's leading the league in turnovers right now.
He's tied for the league in turnovers. What I see is the biggest thing is his picks aren't the issue. I mean, 10 picks, he's right in the pack. He's upper of the pack for interceptions, but that's not that big of a deal. I mean, he's got 29 touchdowns. I see the balance there is okay. There should have been more games that we won this season that weren't his fault.
Yeah,
it is my thing.
But I agree with you. The turnovers, especially, obviously it's beating a dead horse. But we got Khalil Mack coming up. He's got to take care of the ball. He's got to get the ball out. We can't see any fumbles.
What I want to see from him is if they come around the edge, if he's got a lane, take it. I mean, I'll take 4 yards running out of the quarterback. Just make sure you get down.
Tuck the ball, get down.
For sure.
4 yards is 4 yards. We can't, and that's the big thing I've seen from the Vikings offense, not only the last few games, but the entire year, is negative yards and how bad it stalls us out. We can't overcome consistent, 3-yard losses, 5-yard losses, or even 10-yard holdings. So, I mean, we gotta stay ahead of the chains, and we just got to get positive yardage.
For sure. So now what I want to talk about is over or under 3.5 sacks for the Vikings defense.
And I think if you go back to the Bears game that we played earlier at Soldier Field, we should have had 5, 6, even 7 sacks. We got a tackle. I mean, it makes Trubisky look like a god running the football. But if we can just break down and tackle like we have been the last 2 weeks, I see us getting. I can see us. Since we're doing this game, I'll probably have to say. I'll say under, and I say we get 3.
And I'm going big this week. I'm going to say we're going to have 6 sacks this week.
Ooh,
I think that the Vikings defense, I think that the defensive line underperformed in the sack category last week. Yeah. So I think that they overperformed this week.
I would agree with you. We were definitely underperformed last week.
And I just see they're going to learn from their mistakes that they played last time against the Bears, which was letting Trubisky get outside the box. And I say what we do is we spy a linebacker. If Kendricks is healthy and willing and ready to go, I see a spy more, so that we can keep him inside the box.
For sure.
We can't fear his arm too much.
No, I mean I think we can bring safeties up. We can play press. The biggest thing is going to be stopping Tariq Cohen because I mean without a doubt he's electric on that offense. I think he is the staple of the offense. And we gotta fluster Trubisky because he's not a franchise quarterback in my mind.
For sure. I don't think so either. So now we're going to flip. We're going to go to the Bears. So do you see the Bears under or over 100 yards rushing?
I think the defense plays well, especially at home, and I don't see the Bears surpassing 100 yards rushing.
And here's where I see it. I see the Bears. I'm going to say over. I do think the Bears rush for over 100 yards. That is the staple of their offense. But I don't see it making a huge impact. Obviously, 100 yards is going to make a big impact, but I just don't see it. I see it ending in field goals, not ending in touchdowns.
Yeah, and I mean, I said this one for Cousins, and I hope that we play the Bears at full strength because I could really see second half being second stringers for Chicago. But I think this is not only a game where Cousins, steps up and plays out of his mind, and we see really what the Vikings can be as an offense, but I actually think this will be a complete team win, and I think the defense really dominates as well. I can honestly, since we're actually, I guess we'll save the predictions, but I think this is going to be a big, complete team win.
I mean, I'd have to agree with you. Obviously, as a Vikings fan, I'm a little partial to picking the Vikings, but I'd agree with you here.
I just think this is a spot where we just shut up a lot of people.
I hope so.
I'm tired of hearing it, and every Vikings fan will say it. And it's not that it's not worthy, not that the Vikings are worthy of hearing the criticism, but it's just I think it's our time, and I think we punch them in the mouth.
For sure, I think. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I like Zimmer's attitude going into the game.
Absolutely.
I was reading an article. They were talking about how there's some ties back to the Eagles and to the Bears, and they're talking about, we want you to shut them down. And Zimmer's final comment on it was, we don't need help to get in. We win and we're in. And I think that's the mindset that the Vikings will take into this game, and I think they're going to play it like playoff game.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you listen to all the players, post game interviews from even the Lions game, winning in. Yes, they saw the Eagles win against Houston, which was, as a fan, that was tough to watch. But if you listen to every player, they're treating this as a playoff game. This is what they want, and I think they come into the show out.
For sure. So now our last one that we want to talk about is Diggs and Thielen. Do you see them combine for over 150 yards?
I actually see them dominating this one because I see at least one of them getting 100 yards. I couldn't really tell you which one it is just because they're so back and forth. But I think that we easily go over 150 yards for Diggs and Thielen.
For sure.
And with that, I actually want to tie in because Diggs is 26 yards away from 1,000. I hope he gets 26.
I think
26.
he gets 26 on this game. I mean, it's one of those things where we have the luxury of two great receivers, so you have one of them benefit when the other one doesn't because they double team one and can't double team the other.
Well, and I think it's going to be a team thing. Everybody knows that Diggs is going to get, wants to get 1,000 yards. I think it's going to be one of those things, especially if we're up big, they're going to try and force the ball.
Well, and I think last week plays huge into this late week. The Bears have to respect Kyle Rudolph as a deep threat.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I mean, obviously you see it on that Hail Mary, which we talked about, isn't a normal play, but Rudolph's plays well. I mean, he's a 6'5", 6'6" guy, and he can go down the field and go and catch the ball. He's really athletic, rarely gets tackled. I mean, I think that they easily go over 150 yards between.
And I think that's kind of a key that we kind of missed is we got to get Kyle involved here
for sure,
and break up these double teams that they're putting to Diggs and Thielen. And if we can get Kyle Rudolph involved,
and not just Kyle Rudolph, but Tom Conklin as well. He did really well against the Dolphins. Yeah. So I mean I see that happening.
Just getting the tight ends involved ultimately, and obviously the running backs
for sure.
But before we even move on from there, I do want to bring out the injury report for Wednesday. We got a stacked injury report, and I'm not sure if it's precautionary or what it is, but. On the injury report, we have Anthony Barr, but he was a full participant. And then all did not practice was C.J. Ham, Linval Joseph, Eric Kendricks, Mike Remmers, Xavier Rhodes, Marcus Sherrills, and then David Morgan was on there, but he was a full participant. So I'm really hoping this is
of those names, which one do you think is the most critical? Which one do we need to play in this game against the Bears?
That's tough just because there is a lot of names on there, but if I had to say, it would either be between Linval Joseph and Eric Kendricks.
And I'm going to say, mine's going to be Linval Joseph. I just think that we really need to have a big presence on the bottom. What I do like about this, though, is we have depth on the defensive line. What I like about this with Kendricks as well is we have depth in the linebackers. We saw it this last week when Wilson filled in for Kendricks, and Wilson did a great job. Yeah. I mean, he did a really good job.
I think actually one of the bigger ones here, too, is Mike Remmers.
Yeah.
It says it's a lower back, and again, I think this is precautionary, but the last thing that we need right now is, offensive line injuries.
For sure. I mean, that's a place where we've been really touch and go on this season. I think the last 2 weeks they've played really well. I've been really impressed with how the Vikings offensive line has played, opening up runs, and also protecting Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and I mean, they've played well the last 2 weeks. Detroit has a decent defensive line. I think the biggest test is going to be this week, obviously, just with how good the Bears are.
For sure. So now we're going to shift and we're going to go to our picks for this week. First game we got here is the Dolphins and the Bills.
And a lot of these, again, they're not going to meet a whole lot, but we will go ahead and make picks on this one. I actually probably see the Bills winning this one. Bills have a decent defense, and I think the Dolphins are just they're sputtering their way to the finish line.
For sure. I see the Dolphins winning this one. I just think overall they're the better team.
Next one we got Lions-Packers. It was pretty amazing to see. We kind of saw old Aaron Rodgers last week, as I hate to say it. I think the Packers take out the Lions.
I think they do too. This game is at Lambeau. To end the season, there's a lot of pride on the line, I think, for Aaron Rodgers. So I see them winning this game.
Next one, we got the Jags and the Texans. And, of course, the Texans let us down last week. If the Jags had a little bit more offensive production, I would almost take the Jags just because there's just something going on with the Texans right now. They just don't seem all together. But I'll probably go ahead and take the Texans on this one.
I'm also going to take the Texans. Another situation where you have the Jags just don't have a great offense. It's in Houston. So I see the Texans winning that game.
Next one, we got Patriots and Jets. Patriots are actually starting to drown a little bit. Granted, the Jets, the Jets are the Jets this year. So I'm going to go
4-11. I'm also going to go with the Patriots.
Next one, we got Panthers and Saints. Taylor Heinicke, injured reserve, so now they're going to be under their third quarterback. Saints, again, I think they peaked a little too early. That yes, they're still winning, but they're not playing very good ball. I still think the Saints are going to take this.
I think the Saints are too, and this is big. I mean, they'll end the season at 14-2, pretty good mark for them. I think Drew Brees has had he's had an amazing year.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they'll get that first round bye, but I don't know. I don't see him going to the championship game.
No, I mean unless. And what you might end up seeing, though, you could see the Panthers win this game just because I think the Saints are going to rest big time on this one. But, they're not going into playing their highest ball yet. Next one, we got Cowboys and Giants. We keep giving all this credit to the Giants, and they keep letting us down, so I think I'm going to have to take the Cowboys on this one.
And, I mean, I think I'm going to go with the Giants winning this game. It's in New York. I think the Cowboys, I don't see them making it out of the first round of the playoffs. Because what it's set to be right now, if the season ended today, they'd be playing the Seahawks, and I don't see them beating the Seahawks.
And I don't think a lot of teams want to play the Seahawks right now.
For sure, they're on a roll.
I think they're one of those teams that are starting to play their best ball.
I think if they could get them on the road, it might be okay, but the Seahawks at home is going to be tough.
Yeah, and the only thing about that is being a wild card team, not many teams are going to have to go play it.
Yeah, the only time you're going to play is if
6 seed played the 5 seed.
Exactly, in the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
So.
Next one we got here, we got the Falcons and the Buccaneers, another throwaway game. I'm
going to take the Falcons in this game.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll probably just go ahead and take the Falcons on this
one. For
one.
sure. I don't have anything to say about it. Just
just that's what it is. Browns and the Ravens. This could be kind of an interesting game. This is actually a very important game for the Ravens. And the Browns are, again, one of those teams that are really starting to play some pretty good football. I'm going to go ahead. Yes, the Ravens' defense is looking phenomenal. I think I'm going to take the underdog and take the Browns in this one.
I was actually going to take the Browns as well. They played really well. I think there's a lot on the line just morally for them.
Oh, for sure.
Just morale. Just to get to the end of the season with a winning record for the first time in 4 years.
And, I mean, it's kind of fun to see the Browns start.
For sure. I think Baker Mayfield is really fun to watch.
There's just something about him, though. He's kind of an arrogant prick.
I think he's arrogant. But I think that they win that game.
I mean, if you're playing well, you can kind of back it up and do what you want.
For sure.
I'm not going to say a whole lot. Next one, we got the Raiders and the Chiefs. Chiefs, again, not playing very good ball, but I think the Chiefs beat the Raiders.
Yeah, I also agree.
Next one, obviously, we'll save the Vikings and Bears for last. But we got the Bengals and the Steelers. Steelers, again, are not playing very good ball, but they're going to need some help. They need to win, and they need the Ravens to lose. So,
I see the Steelers winning this game. I think there's a lot on the line. I think Big Ben's going to come through when they need him to.
But, now that we're saying that, do you see the Steelers getting in?
I see the Steelers getting in.
Do you?
I think the Ravens lose, and I think the Steelers win.
I think I'm going to have to backtrack on myself a little bit here. I think the Ravens are going to win, and the Steelers lose. I think the Steelers win still, but I don't think they get in.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and we're going to say the Steelers get in.
All right, big game for the Vikings. It's going to be the Eagles at Redskins.
As much as I would like to say the Redskins win this game,
it's
with
tough to
picks
go
on
the
the
road.
line, I think the Eagles win this game.
Yeah, I think the Eagles win this game as well. It's tough to win on the road, but with the Redskins, where their quarterback situation is, and they lost to Tennessee, yes, they're going to want to put them out. But I see the Eagles winning this one. Next one, we got the Chargers and the Broncos.
I see the Broncos winning this game because I don't see the Chargers playing at full strength.
Yeah, I don't see them playing at
They
full
don't have
strength.
anything on the line. They've already locked down the 5 seed. I see them coasting.
Well, and I think after losing to the Raiders, the Broncos are going to come out with a chip on their shoulder.
For sure.
Yeah, and like you're saying, I think the Chargers are going to rest a lot of people, so I see the Broncos winning this one as well.
For sure.
Next one, which is actually, again, another really important game for the Vikings game, is the Rams at the 49ers. The 49ers at the Rams. 49ers have actually given a lot of people fits. They gave the Bears fits last week, and they beat the Seahawks the other week.
I see the Rams winning this game, though. It is when the Niners beat the Seahawks, they beat them at the Niners. So I see this being a Rams game.
Yeah, and why I say this is because I think if the Rams can get an early lead and an early big lead, Chicago could rest a lot of their starters. Sure. So this is a big one, and I want the Rams to win big. I think the Rams do win.
Yeah, for sure. This next game we have is the Cardinals and the Seahawks. I'm going to go ahead and go out way on a limb because this is what we need, and I'm going to say the Cardinals win this game. It's at Arizona. Oh, it's at... I guess it's at Seattle. So what I see here is, I still just see the Cardinals going in and winning.
Being that it's at CenturyLink, I think the Seahawks are going to take this one. That's a pretty tough place to play.
Yeah, but hey, and the season miracles happen.
No kidding. The last one of the week, and actually this is probably the biggest game of the week, and this is a win and in for each team. It'd be the Colts at Tennessee. I think the Colts are going to win this one.
I think they will too.
I think they're actually playing pretty good ball.
I think so too, and I think Andrew Luck's had a phenomenal season coming back. I really see the Colts taking this one again.
And I think that's who's going to get the comeback player of the year.
For sure. I think he's well deserving of it.
Oh, absolutely. We'll do picks later for awards. That'll be the end of the season. But obviously the last game going to be our Vikings against the Bears. Obviously we're taking the Vikings. I think the Vikings win big.
What's your prediction for a score on this one?
I think it ends up being 28. I'll go 28-14.
I'm gonna go 31-7. I think the Vikings come out and punch them in the mouth.
Big time.
I think this is one of those statement games for the Vikings. You got to get a lot of confidence going in to Soldier Field if they win it. You got to get a lot of confidence going into Soldier Field the next week. So I see the Vikings coming out and punch them in the mouth.
Big time.
So yeah, for sure. One thing I want to talk to you, just to kind of wrap up this podcast, is the refs this week. What is your opinion on that?
It's tough to get into, and if we would have done this podcast probably on Monday after, actually probably Sunday night,
right after we saw this unfold.
I'd probably be fuming big time. But I can't explain how bad the reffing has been this year. I love watching football. I will always watch the Vikings, but I have never watched random football games, and I always love watching just random football games. And, been so mad that the reffing that I just want to change the channel.
Well, and the one that sticks out to me, which was a huge game for the Vikings, is the Eagles-Texans game. On that roughing the passer, they need to clarify this rule more because he
didn't land on him.
He didn't land on him.
He didn't hit him to his head or neck.
No.
Area.
I don't understand what you're supposed to do.
He put a solid hit straight into his chest.
I think that because it is Carson Wentz and the Eagles, they got the call.
Nick Foles,
excuse me. I think they got the call. I really think that this is one that really affected the outcome of the game. Add 15 yards of that last field goal to win the game, and that's huge.
Well, even that, just 15 yards in general, changes your play calling.
For sure.
And I mean, and it's the Eagles and it's the Seahawks. Granted, there are bad calls against the Vikings, for everybody. But just consistently bad reffing.
Not just that, but it consistently favors the team with more star-studded players. If you look at it, Aaron Rodgers will get a call way before Blaine Gabbert's going to get the call.
Well, if you look at the Dolphins games, there were flags that should have been thrown against the Vikings.
I agree.
There should have been 2 roughing the passer.
And that's why I'm so confused about this new roughing the passer call.
Well, if you're trying to get new viewers, why are you throwing all of these flags? And
Exactly.
if you look at and I understand, if you look at every play, there could be a flag thrown. But in important moments, in important games, if it's a flag, fine, throw the flag. But if it's gonna be that game changing, they need to be reviewed.
For sure. Well, now I go back again. A Vikings play, that Seattle Seahawks game where he jumped the line.
Yeah,
why can't you review this play?
That is ridiculous.
It's
Even the
stupid.
NFL came out and said that was a
Well,
flag.
and what I don't understand is when you watch the replay of it, you have the one ref that threw the flag was the only one behind the play. He sees everything as it's happening and throws the flag. How can you overrule him and have him pick that up?
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. If you're trying to bring fans to the game, you can't consistently have this gray area in penalties. And it's not even only for new fans, but it's like, fans for us, we've been watching for 20 plus years. And it's just frustrating because you don't want to watch random games.
No.
Granted, if you're an NFL fan and you love your team, you're gonna watch your team no matter what. But watching random games, it's never been harder for me to watch random games.
For sure. So that's all the time we have here today. Big Vikings game this week. Go out and watch it. Hit a like and subscribe. And just keep checking us out.
And of course, next Wednesday we'll go ahead and preview it and get you the latest on Minnesota sports news.